Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Sunday, December 7th, 2025, and Carney's plan to reduce the overall bloat of the bureaucracy that we're paying for is to pay off retiring employees with their full salary 5 years early, with their full pension 5 years early. So it doesn't really do anything to fix anything, and it costs almost as much as doing nothing, I think. It saves $82 million a year, but I think it costs $300 million a year. So it's ridiculous, and that doesn't help. I think what it does fundamentally is put things into a different bucket. And so you can say, look, we've saved this money here, and don't worry, we're doing stuff, but actually not doing anything. So it's another proof that when they say they're going to do something or fix something, they don't actually do anything or fix anything. They just kind of make things worse in a muddy kind of way. And that's true. That's as true as the liberal tap dance. Every time they get asked a question, they just tap dance around it. They don't answer questions they don't like, and they move on. And we're stuck with it, unfortunately, until we recognize the game we're playing. Marco Rubio says the USA is going to stop funding NGOs, the NGO industrial complex. So that's interesting. I think that that's a very interesting, very surgical, very purposeful thing to say. And so we'll see if that actually happens, because if the NGOs start being removed from the funding machine that they've been plugged into, well, then those things die, right? And they lose their power, and that would be good. Dacey is targeted in court. They asked him to turn off his phone, and he can't record or anything like that. But there were other media and other bloggers who were ignored and allowed to continue using their electronic devices, and that's concerning and confusing. Everyone's calling for the EU to be abolished. Elon Musk and a whole bunch of other people are saying, yeah, he's right. We should abolish the EU. It doesn't accomplish anything. Viktor Orban, a whole bunch of people are jumping on the same bandwagon. No referendum allowed in Alberta, but I've already reported on the fact that Smith has already dealt with this, but I didn't know why she was reaffirming the ability to have the referendum. I now see that a rogue court or a rogue justice was trying to shut it down, but Danielle Smith came in to help out, so that's good. And there's a clause buried in the budget implementation bill that exempts or allows ministers to exempt any company from any law other than criminal code for 6 years. And so who needs any laws, right? Who needs any stinking laws in Canada? If we had laws, we wouldn't be able to fix our terrible economy. So it's so weird, right? It's so crazy. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, GM Forbes says Carney buried a clause deep in the budget that gives the cabinet ministers the authority to ignore any law in the books except the criminal code for a period of 6 years. And I don't think it's the cabinet minister. I think they're allowed to exempt companies and things like that under the guise of allowing to fast track business or something like that. And here is the article's right here, but it's paywalled, and so there's a bigger piece of the article in the image, but I'll read this part first. Toronto Star is reporting Mark Carney is quietly giving sweeping new powers to his ministers. Hidden in the federal government's 634-page Omnibus Bill C-15, the Budget Implementation Act, is a measure that has so far escaped scrutiny. Under the pretext of regulatory efficiency, Prime Minister Mark Carney plans to grant cabinet ministers the power to exempt any individual or company from any federal laws on the books, except for criminal code, up to 6 years. I mean, like, how far does that go? And at what point, criminal code is one thing, but what other laws are we talking about? And like, at what point does ignoring those laws then breach into criminal code, right? Like, if you ignore this, what's the ongoing effect of that? Is it putting the finger on the scale of some kind of company you own? Maybe is there a conflict of interest? You own this company and they're going to get richer. Is it the company Brookfield? The measure wasn't included in the version of the Liberals' November 4th budget that was given to reporters. It was not discussed in the government's speeches in Parliament about this bill. No opposition party, aside from the Bloc Québécois, seems to have noticed it. Noticed it was there until the Star pointed it out. So interesting. Here's a bit more to this article. That's not to say they aren't alarmed by Carney's continued push to find efficiency shortcuts by bypassing democratic norms. The Liberal government is granting itself the right to evade the application of laws without going through Parliament, Bloc finance critic Jean-Denis Guérin told the Star. Just as the Liberals did with C5, the Building Act, giving Cabinet the power to decide which laws should apply to projects of national interest, Guérin said they're once again trying to bypass pass laws or regulations, but this time by using the pretext of innovation. We understand that for the Liberal government, environmental laws or transportation safety laws are irritants that they would like to do without, he said. So who needs seatbelts, right? Regulation, smegulation. Let's get these things to market. It's concerning, or could potentially be concerning. And so it's interesting as well that it's not talked about in speeches. It wasn't given to the reporters. What kind of game are they trying to play? And they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes and not inform us. And more often than not, the press is happy to play along. Melissa Lantsman's highlighting this Globe Politics article that says Carney government faces an impasse over their budget bill as MPs head into the final week before the break. And so we have one more week. Are they going to pass C9 before the end of this week? It's in the second reading and it hasn't moved since October, but there's all sorts of committees. They keep canceling committees. Can they move forward with this if they have the support of the bloc? Can they move forward with this if they haven't done the committees? I genuinely don't know. So sorry, I should maybe know, but I don't know. Melissa Lantsman says Parliament is finally taking a hard look at the Carney budget. A budget with a $78 billion deficit, a $90 billion in new spending, and the fantasy math holding it all together. For a government allergic to oversight, this must feel downright unbearable. What an inconvenience Parliament is for them. And so now that the budget is passed, people are upset about the budget implementation bill. It's not a confidence thing, so they can hold it up. So it seems it's too late. Like the people who should have held this government to account for the bad budget they put forward and the fantasy math and all the rest that Melissa Lantsman's saying is wrong with it, should have done something other than hide Andrew Scheer in the curtains to make sure the budget passed. I don't think that it was a mistake that the budget passed. I don't think that it was an error. I think that everybody's working together and Andrew Scheer did his part. And now they're pretending to fight on Twitter. And so I'm not convinced the Conservative Party of Canada. Polyev is responding to the National Post article. National Post article says Carney's plan to reduce the civil service will cost $1.5 billion to cut payroll by just $82 million. Wah, wah, right? Like, that's not so good. That's a lot of money. And Pierre Polyev says another masterstroke from the banker who can't budget, spending $1.5 billion to save $82 million. No wonder his deficit is twice the size of Trudeau's, because he's not as smart as they tell us he is. Concerned Citizen is responding to this as well. Same thing that Polyev's talking about. National Post's headline is, rather than conducting mass layoffs of the Canadian civil service, the Carney government is resurrecting a 1990s strategy of reducing the public sector by paying them handsomely to leave. And Concerned Citizen says, typical liberal misguided ideology. They want to cut back the bureaucracy, so instead of a hiring freeze and relying on attrition, they believe that you just prepay the bureaucrats and give them early pensions to leave. The cost the cost will well exceed the benefit. No wonder they can't balance a budget. It's not good, and this doesn't fix it, and it won't fix it, and it'll actually probably make it worse in the mid, short, and medium term. So great work, guys. Everything they touch, they don't fix, they make worse. Even removing people with golden parachutes, they can't do that right. Mario is responding to this as well. We would know. Why we will never prosper under a Liberal rule. The early retirement incentive would offer free early retirement to civil servants age 50 and over. A government worker with just 10 years of service could retire up to 5 years early and still collect their full pension. You know they're moving to Mexico when they do that, right? Like, full pension in Mexico. Isn't that where Sheila Copps lives? I think that's where Sheila Copps lives. Genuine. I'm not even making a joke. I think she moved to Mexico and she's been there for years. Cops Coliseum indeed, Sheila. National Post says Carney's plan to reduce civil servants will cost $1.5 billion to cut payroll by just $82 million. This is a bad deal. If somebody offered you this deal, you don't take this deal. Carney says, I'm the smartest banker in the room, buddy. Sign me up. And here's the story. Rather than conducting mass layoffs, they're going to pay them handsomely to leave. However, despite costing $1.5 billion, it will deliver a federal payroll that will only be about $82 million cheaper. As such, it could presumably be up to 18 years until the program breaks even. Yay! Who's holding the bag for that? We are. One taxpayer, remember? So it is expensive and stupid, and expensively stupid. And it's unfortunate because we have to pay for it. Wealth Moose says Canada versus the USA food price split no one wants to talk about. Put the charts side by side and the story screams at you. In the US, food prices have moved along perfectly in line with overall inflation for 30 plus years. Normal, predictable, boring. In Canada, food prices break away from CPI around 2008 to 2010 and never come back. Same global markets, same commodity shocks, same world events, yet somehow only Canada ends up with runaway grocery bills year after year. This isn't bad luck. It's not global forces. It's a structural failure. Policy, competition, supply chains, taxation, governance, baked in over a decade and compounding. Canada doesn't have a food inflation moment. It has a food inflation system, and we're all paying for it at the checkout. And so you can see Canada's chart and the US chart side by side, and the US chart is in line with the inflation chart, and Canada's is decoupled from inflation in 2008, and we're head and shoulders above inflation, right? And the US almost hugs the inflationary line, very, very close, right? So I don't know. It's very interesting, and I don't know. I hope the food is not a big issue, because I like eating and I like chocolate cereal. So I don't want to starve, and I don't want to be inconvenienced by these tyrants. So I'm mad as heck, and I'm not going to take it anymore. The food professor says when you compare Canada left and the United States right, the story jumps off the charts in the US. Yeah. This one as well. Louis says, like, look at this chart. Pretty crazy, right? So 2025 is actually worse than 1985. So we've lost 40 years of production and everything, growth, everything gone. That would be bad. I wonder, imagine riding this back though. Like, that'd be good. Hopefully it'll go faster than 40 years, right? But if this is true, the Carney government shouldn't stand, right? If this chart is an accurate representation, and yeah, it does look accurate. I've seen charts where Canada's done better on this side, and so this could be modified. But food professor said, indeed, it's a problem. Yeah, it's a problem, and it's not going to get better with the same people in charge doing the same bad policies and turning a blind ear, and indeed bringing in censorship laws to silence their critics. Mario says this is badass. I don't know, man. Conservatives are going to table a motion to support an oil pipeline from Alberta to BC's coast, using language from the Liberal Memorandum of Understanding, forcing the Liberal MPs in BC to vote against something they have in their own Memorandum of Understanding. BC Liberals hated the Memorandum of Understanding. Will they vote against their own government? So, yeah, I can see BC Liberals voting against their own government. Here's Dallas Brody. This is our grab bag of governance. This is Cat Canada interviewing Dallas Brody about what's going on with regards to bans, First Nations bans taking money for digging and looking for graves, et cetera, but they never did it. And so she thinks they should have to repay that money, and she outlines how she thinks they should have to repay that money. Here we go.
4.5 years later, we have no evidence. We just have claims, and no excavation has been done. What do you think happened to all that money?
Well, we've seen some of the reports that they went to consultants. I know one document that I saw showed that 2 therapists were paid $650,000.
Therapists for what? What were they doing?
For the deal with the trauma of the claim or the findings.
I see.
And then consultants were hired. Large of it was on media consultants. It was earmarked for digging, and it should have been used for that. And my position has been that if you didn't use it for that, then you need to refund it with interest at the rate that the government charges us when we don't pay our taxes on time, which I believe right now is 8%, which is above prime. You should have to refund the money with interest to the government and apologize that you didn't use it properly. And I also think that the chief of that band should step down and apologize to Canada for doing this.
Yeah, well, good. And so hopefully the BC legislature won't be able to recall Dallas Brody, but they're trying to. Pierre Poilievre says Liberal minister gives away $15 billion to battery plant Stellantis and never reads the contract, but implies that she has read the contract and that the other MP is not well informed and hasn't done his homework and is asking her an erroneous question or something. Here you go.
The question is, why is there no reference to keeping jobs at Stellantis and so much emphasis on these policies?
But I don't know why you're all saying that there's no commitment. There is. So just look at the contracts and then you'll be informed.
Has the minister seen the fully unredacted contract?
I certainly would, if she has, it wouldn't have been through my office, so my sense is no. I've actually not seen the fully unredacted version myself.
It's wild. It's wild. We're giving away contracts.
The question is,
Stellantis has already moved to the United States. They've already breached the contract, and has anybody read it now? Like, this contract is null and void. Should we read it? Yeah, maybe. Let's unredact it and have a look, eh? How could we agree to this? I don't know. CBC Watcher says, watch Lily with Brown next time CBC, CTV, or mainstream media quote Coastal First Nations. Remember this, Coastal First Nations got money from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. They got money from the Tides Foundation, the Moore Foundation, the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation. What did all of these foundations have in common? They opposed the development of Canada's oil and gas industry. It's an activist group. They speak for a small minority of First Nations groups but CBC portray them as speaking for all BC First Nations. Lily says it's akin to saying, well, the NDP is opposed to it and the NDP speak for Canadians. CBC went nuts over false claims the Freedom Convoy was foreign funded, but this is precisely how this group was started. Then Trudeau gave him $200 million and EB another $60 million in 2023. But when Eco Activist Group is funded by a half dozen First Nation groups to stop a Canadian pipeline development, CBC joins in on the fraudulent representation. Yeah, so we're going to have to reaffirm very clearly that we don't want any money going to mitigation or anything that has to do with climate change is probably money laundering, and we should probably stop it all of it, money laundering. Tim Houston says, I think it's rich when politicians who can't clearly define what a woman is when asked put out stuff like this, right? Tim Houston's a pretend conservative. I don't think that Tim Houston is really conservative because I don't know what he's conserved. Anyway, he says, today on the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, we remember the 14 women whose lives were taken at Eco Polytechnique simply because they were women. We honor their memory and stand with everyone affected by gender-based violence. So yeah, it's one of those things where they utilize tragedy in order to be able to talk about something to further their political career, where I think that it's disingenuous to champion women who were murdered in a tragic thing that didn't need to happen, and not stand up for women now when they're under attack, their private spaces are under attack by a radical false ideology that instead of calling it out, these people affirm it while pretending to stand up for violence against women. It seems there's a lot of hypocrisy in our ruling class, and I'm kind of sick and tired of it, right? And Jeff says, how many young women have been sexually butchered into permanent medical patients for profit livestock for big pharma since you took office, right? So yeah, it's one of those things where I think the hypocrisy is off the charts. And I think it's kind of gross when politicians invoke past atrocities to say I'm politically relevant now, but won't talk about current atrocities that are happening now. We're sending our children to schools that are offering boys the option to use the girls' washroom for no good reason at all. Doug Ford said he'd fight gender ideology in classrooms. I know yesterday I said that, and everybody said your first mistake was believing Doug Ford. I believed Dalton McGuinty too until he burned me. He said no new taxes, and he said we're going to introduce this health levy. I was like, a levy's a tax, man. That's a different word for it. It's the same damn thing, Dalton. Anyway, here is Danielle Smith. She says, this week, the NDP voted against our motion to protect Albertans' rights to defend their homes and families. The NDP may not like it, but we will never apologize. I will never apologize for standing up for Albertans. And so it's this kind of stuff I think is straightforward. And I think it's wild that the NDP are opposing any kind of castle laws or anything like that, considering how dangerous things are getting in Canada. It's a very, very concerning and interesting situation. I thought this is funny. This is where the video froze and the title. And so there's a very multicultural image of people wearing military garb. And CTV News is reporting Canadian Armed Forces sees a surge in recruits. And so I thought this was interesting because here's another article, and the other articles from the National Post. It says 2/3 of Canadians support sending our troops to countries such as Poland if Russia invades, according to a new poll. If Russia invades who? If Russia invades, we'll just leave that open. Russia invades anybody, and we're going to Poland, everybody. 2/3, everybody. So all of these new recruits are super duper excited to go to Ukraine and die for Ukraine? NATO? For what exactly? The Canadian Armed Forces are seeing a surge of recruits graduating from basic training at the Leadership and Recruit School in Saint-Jean, Quebec. This marks a sea change after years of missing targets and grappling with how to get more Canadians signed up to serve. 5 platoons recently took part in the parade marking graduation after 8 weeks of instruction, putting 204 would-be soldiers, sailors, aviators, and new officers through their paces. This year, we put on 77,600 basic training seats, which is the most we've ever run. That's interesting, notable. Commander Mark Keeley said, "This is the most we have ever run in the post-Cold War history of the Canadian Forces." Again, very interesting. 22-year-old Private Erica Jamor Valdez was among the recruits from across the country marching in the parade attended by hundreds of family members and friends. She says, "I think the Canadian Forces worked really hard to improve their image and also diversity. I think that it's become a more welcoming environment for different people." Despite efforts to address sexual misconduct in the armed forces, only 18% of applicants are women. It's funny. Their only problem with the record-setting recruits is that they're men. Darn it, right? Our women are not joining this war fighting. Why not, women? Overall, they say, changes made in recent years are helping beef up military ranks, including Ottawa putting more money on the table. So maybe this is the best job people can get because there isn't anything else, right? Oh, you can't work at McDonald's, but you could join the army. So have fun in Ukraine. 2/3 of Canadians support it. I don't know anybody who's been asked about this. I don't think anybody in Canada. And I could be speaking in a biased way. I could be projecting my own bias here. But I don't think there's anybody in Canada who wants to, go participate in a war in Poland or Russia or anything like that. Nobody's. During the Second World War, people were lying about their age because they enthusiastically wanted to go to war. I don't think anybody right now is enthusiastic about war in the same way. That's the point I'm trying to make. And they're trying to change that with articles like this, but I just find it interesting. Very notable. Here is Andrew Lawton, and this is actually from December 2nd. And no, this is not from December 2nd. This is a different Andrew Lawton thing. And he's asking the debate commissioner what he does. And what he does, it's a 6-minute clip, so we're not going to watch it. And this guy's a little bit awkward when he's answering questions because he's very careful with Lawton because he's worried that it seems like he's worried he's got a gotcha question. But he answers the questions, and so the back and forth is illuminating. Jay says, today Andrew Lawton accidentally committed the greatest sin in Ottawa. He asked debate commissioner Michael Cormier a real question. So what exactly do you do for your $200,000 part-time salary? Right there in broad daylight, the man collapsed into a black hole of his own job description. What followed was the kind of performance only Ottawa can produce, a blender set to word salad puree. But fundamentally, he says, imagine pocketing nearly $200,000 a year to plan debates that vanish like mythical creatures, coordinate with people who aren't in the room, review documents that never see daylight, safeguard democracy at the speed of a government coffee break. He's a part-time employee who makes $200,000 a year per year to arrange debates once every 4 years or whenever there's an election. Whew. Crony insider politics here, folks. Only in Ottawa can you hold a part-time job with full-time pay and no time accountability, and everyone just nods like it's perfectly normal. Welcome to the Government Waste Hall of Fame, where the budgets are real and the responsibilities are theoretical. Yeah, truth. Absolute truth. Unbelievable stuff as well. And we're at 25 minutes already. Holy smoke. I've got to say goodbye to the stream. This was funny. I'm going to say this and then I'm going to go. Funny is not really the right word, but this is not how crime used to go in Canada. If you got stabbed by the TTC clerk, you'd go find a police officer. You would not go get your own weapon to stab them back. Okay. But that's exactly what happened in this. I was with family the other day. It's the time of year for family, right? And so everybody's sitting around and chatting and bringing up their own anecdotes of things. And this popped on my feed and I do this all the time. Like, it's kind of like when there's downtime, and I'm not meaning to ignore my family or anything like that. But anyway, I saw this and I was like, oh my gosh, hold on. You have to hear this story. So this is what I said. I said, Two parties, a male customer and a female TTC employee, became engaged in a verbal altercation near the TTC fare wickets inside the subway station. Oh, this was topical. We were talking about how crazy things had been and like crime's really getting out of control. And I thought this was funny. And I was like, hold on, you'll never guess. So two parties, male customer, female employee, they get into a verbal altercation inside the subway station. Two parties assaulted each other. The TTC employee stabbed the customer with a knife. The TTC employee had a knife. The parties separated and the customer then returned and stabbed the TTC employee with a knife. Both the customer and the TTC employee were transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The two parties are not known to each other. Holy cow. Holy cow. What? That seems odd. Doesn't it seem odd to everybody else? Anyway, I thought that was funny. Everybody thought that was kind of funny. And what a strange, sad comment on our country that used to be so great, right? This time of year, you wouldn't have people stabbing each other, right? Like, my gosh. And if you get stabbed by a TTC employee, go find their supervisor or a police officer. Don't go get your own knife and stab them back. Although these days, the justice system is such that maybe that's the only way to get justice these days. But I am not advocating for violence. And with that, thanks for watching on the stream. If you want the whole show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. If not, that's okay. We'll catch you tomorrow. And there's no kitchen table talk today. I've got another family event, lots of things going on. And for everybody else, we'll carry on as soon as I kill the stream. I've got that done. And let's talk about the invasion of the West ongoing. And Maxime Bernier says mass migration has a negative impact on our social cohesion and standard of living. The State Department, who's talking about this in November, you're right. In Canada, the People's Party is the only one fighting against mass migration and putting Canadians first. Truth. Department of State says mass migration poses an existential threat to Western civilization and undermines the stability of key American allies. Today, the State Department instructed the U.S. embassies to report